My name is Carrie. I was 34 at the time, working as a middle school art teacher in Columbus, Ohio. I'm the kind of person who keeps a sketchbook in her bag at all times. I'd been doing it since college. Just a habit, something to do with my hands when I'm anxious. It was a Thursday night in February. My younger sister had called me from the ER. She'd slipped on ice in her parking lot and thought she'd sprained her wrist badly enough to need X-ray. Nothing life-threatening. I drove over after dinner, told her I'd sit with her while she waited, because wait times in Columbus on a weekday night can run 3-4 hours easy. The waiting room was maybe a third full. Fluorescent overhead lights. A TV mounted in the corner playing a cable news channel with the volume too low to actually hear. The chairs were that particular shade of teal that hospitals seem to buy in bulk. My sister got called back to triage pretty quickly, so I settled in to wait alone, opened my sketchbook, and started drawing the room. There was a man across from me, probably late 50s, gray jacket, dark slacks. He was just sitting there, hands folded in his lap, not looking at his phone, not watching the TV, just sitting. I noticed him the way you notice anyone in a quiet room. Briefly, then you look away. About 20 minutes in, I glanced up from my sketchbook, and he was looking directly at me. Not in a caught-staring way, not embarrassed. He just held eye contact for a second, then looked back at his hands. I figured he was just zoning out, and I happened to be in his line of sight. I went back to drawing. Another 15 minutes passed. I went to get a coffee from the vending machine down the hall. When I came back, he'd moved. He was now sitting 2 seats to my left, in the same row. There were at least 20 empty chairs in the room. I remember thinking that was a little strange, but I told myself maybe he'd moved closer to the TV, or maybe he'd gotten up and just sat back down in the wrong seat by accident. The way you do when you're tired. I checked my phone, texted my sister, opened my sketchbook again. He leaned toward me and said, "Are you an artist?" I said yes, sort of, just a hobby. He nodded slowly, didn't say anything else, didn't look away. I noticed his hands then. He was wearing latex gloves, the thin, disposable kind. I told myself he was probably immunocompromised. A lot of people wear gloves in hospitals. Totally reasonable. Then he said, "Who are you here for?" Something about the way he asked it made me pause. Not what are you here for? Who? Like he wanted a name. I told him I was waiting for a friend, vague on purpose. He nodded again, looked down at my sketchbook. "Can I see?" I said sure, and held it up without handing it over. He looked at it for a long moment. Too long. Then he said, very quietly, "You drew me." I had. I draw what's in front of me. It was just a practice sketch, just a figure in a chair. His face wasn't even detailed, but he was smiling now. This slow, private smile, like I'd done something that pleased him. Like I'd given him something. My sister wasn't going to be called back for at least another hour. I texted her immediately. "Come get me from the waiting room. Right now. Please." She texted back, "I'm hooked up to N4." He was still looking at my sketchbook. I said I needed to use the restroom. Picked up my bag, stood up. He stood up too. I walked toward the hallway. Fast but not running. I heard his footsteps behind me. I turned left toward the nurse's station instead of the bathroom. There was a nurse at the desk. I walked right up to her and said, "I need to find my sister. She's back in triage. Her name is Dana Ferraro." I didn't look back. The nurse started typing. I heard his footsteps stop when she walked me through the doors into the back. I finally turned around. He was standing at the boundary where the waiting room meets the hallway, just standing there, watching me go. He wasn't holding anything, wasn't doing anything, just watching. The automatic doors swung shut between us. I stayed in the back with my sister until she was discharged. A nurse walked us to my car. When I told the security desk what had happened, they reviewed the waiting room camera footage. The man had come in through the A entrance at 9:14 p.m., sat for about 40 minutes, and left through the main lobby doors about 3 minutes after I went through the back. He had never checked in, never approached the desk, no record of why. He was there. He wasn't a patient, wasn't waiting for anyone they could identify. I still carry my sketchbook, but I don't draw people in waiting rooms anymore. I'm not totally sure why. I just don't want anyone to know I've been watching them. Marcus had been pulling double shifts for most of November. He told me the job wasn't bad, mostly walking the floor, checking equipment, logging inventory, but the hours messed with his sleep cycle in a way he was still trying to fix too. Years later, he was also dealing with a flare-up of a chronic back issue he'd had since his late 20s, the kind that comes and goes without warning and can put him flat on the floor if he moves wrong. One night in late November, he woke up at around 2 a.m. and couldn't stand up straight. The pain was bad enough that he drove himself to the nearest urgent care, except urgent care was closed, so he ended up at the AE of a mid-sized regional hospital about 12 minutes from his apartment. He checked in, got triaged, was told the wait would be somewhere between 2 and 3 hours, and went to find a seat. The waiting room was quiet. 7 or 8 other people scattered across the chairs. A man in work boots asleep against the wall. A young couple in the corner, the woman resting her head on the man's shoulder. A teenage girl texting with both thumbs. Marcus found a chair near an outlet, plugged in his phone, and tried to get comfortable, which was not easy given that sitting made his back worse than standing. He noticed the woman across the room because she was watching the entrance doors, not the TV, not her phone, just the doors. Every time they slid open, someone coming in, someone leaving, her head would turn. She'd watch whoever it was until they moved past her, then go back to watching the doors. Marcus thought maybe she was waiting for someone to arrive. He did the same thing when he was expecting somebody. 40 minutes passed. Nobody came in for her. She got up, walked to the vending machine on the far wall, bought something, came back. As she passed Marcus, he noticed she wasn't wearing a hospital bracelet, hadn't checked in as far as he could tell. She had a large canvas tote bag on her shoulder, the kind you'd bring to a farmer's market. He thought, visitor then. Someone's family member killing time. Around 1 a.m., the waiting room had thinned out. The sleeping man in work boots had been called back. The young couple had left. It was Marcus, the teenage girl, an elderly man with a cane, and the woman with the tote bag. She moved closer. Not dramatically, just shifted 2 rows forward. Then, a few minutes later, 1 seat to the right. Small adjustments. The kind you wouldn't clock unless you'd been watching. Marcus had been watching. He couldn't sleep anyway. Then his phone buzzed. He glanced down, a text from his cousin, and when he looked up, she was sitting directly beside him. 1 seat away. He hadn't heard her move. She was looking at his phone. He turned the screen over. She smiled at him. It didn't reach her eyes at all. She said, "Long wait, huh?" He said, "Yeah, she said. "You live close by?" He didn't answer that. She reached into the tote bag. His whole body went still. She pulled out a granola bar, offered it to him. He said no thanks. She put it on the armrest between them anyway. He stood up, back screaming. Didn't care. He walked to the check-in desk, told the receptionist he needed to wait somewhere else. Was there a secondary waiting area? A family room? Anything? The receptionist looked confused. Said they only had the one. He said, That woman has been moving toward me for the last hour, and she's not checked in. The receptionist looked past him. He turned around. Her chair was empty. The tote bag was gone, but the granola bar was still on the armrest. The receptionist called security. They walked the floor, checked the bathrooms, checked the parking lot on the camera feed. She was gone. But here's the thing Marcus couldn't let go of. The camera footage showed her coming in through the ambulance bay entrance. Not the main A doors she'd been watching all night. The ambulance bay. A door that is supposed to be staff access only and is kept locked from the outside. Somehow, she'd come in through a locked door and then spent an hour watching the public entrance. Security had no explanation. Marcus was finally called back around 3:30 a.m., got a cortisone shot, drove home at dawn. He filed a written report with hospital security before he left. He never heard back about what they found. He told me the granola bar detail bothers him more than anything else, not the door, not the moving closer, the granola bar left behind. She wanted me to take something from her, he said. I don't know what would have happened if I had. He takes a buddy with him to any medical appointment now. He hasn't been to an IA alone since. Priya had been living in her city for about 8 months when this happened. She'd relocated for a relationship that ended 4 months in, and stayed partly because she liked the city and partly because she hadn't fully admitted to herself yet that she wanted to leave. She knew almost nobody. Her closest friend was her college roommate, who lived in Portland Dot in March. She developed what she was pretty sure was a kidney stone. She'd had one before, in grad school, and the flank pain was unmistakable. It wasn't her first choice to go to an eye alone in a city she barely knew, but by 11 p.m. she was in enough pain that she didn't have another option. She checked into the A, got triaged, was told to take a seat and wait for imaging. The waiting room was half full. A Friday night crowd, the usual mix of people who looked exhausted and people who looked frightened. She found a seat, took out her AirPods, put on a podcast, and tried to breathe through the pain. The woman beside her introduced herself immediately. Late 30s, friendly, said her name was Tessa. Tessa was warm in a way that felt genuine, easy to talk to. She said she was there because her elderly father had been brought in by ambulance and she was waiting to hear something. She looked tired but steady, the kind of person who holds it together in a crisis. Priya took her AirPods out. They talked about the hospital, about the wait, about the city. Priya mentioned she was still relatively new, didn't know many people yet. Tessa said she knew exactly how that felt. Said she'd moved there herself a few years back, and it took time. It felt like exactly the kind of small, genuine connection you sometimes make with strangers in difficult situations. About an hour in, Tessa asked if Priya wanted anything from the vending machine down the hall. Priya said she was okay, thanks. Tessa said she was going to stretch her legs and went down the hall. Priya noticed she'd left her phone on her seat. She thought, people do that. You leave your phone to hold your seat. Tessa came back 10 minutes later with a bottle of water, set it on the armrest beside Priya, said, "You look like you need it. Trust me." Priya thanked her and picked it up. The seal cracked when she opened it. Normal. Completely normal. She took one sip. Something made her stop. She looked at the bottle, looked at the cap. The seal had cracked, yes, but the perforated ring beneath, it was already separated from the cap, already broken, like it had been opened before and resealed. She put the bottle down on the floor beside her chair, very quietly. Didn't say anything. She looked at Tessa. Tessa was watching her, not glancing over, watching, waiting. Priya looked at the bottle again. Tessa said, "You okay?" Priya said yeah. Said the pain was just spiking. Totally normal. She put her AirPods back in without starting anything. Left them in as props. Started thinking. Tessa had come from the vending machine direction. A factory-sealed bottle from a vending machine cannot have a pre-broken tamper ring. You can't buy an open bottle from a machine. It's physically not possible. Priya stood up. Said she was going to check on her status at the desk. She walked away without her bag. Turned the corner. Found a nurse immediately. Told her everything. Fast. Quiet. The nurse walked back with her. Tessa was gone. The water bottle was still on the floor. The nurse picked it up with a glove and put it in a bag without being asked. They called security. Priya's hands were shaking. She kept thinking, I almost drank it. One sip. She'd taken one sip. She was kept for observation for 6 hours. The kidney stone imaging happened somewhere in the middle of that. She was fine. The bottle was sent for testing. She was never told the results. Priya moved back to Portland 3 months later. She told her college roommate what happened, and her roommate told her that not knowing the test results was probably better. Priya disagrees. She'd rather know. The hospital told her they had no record of a patient named Tessa or a man brought in by ambulance matching the description Tessa had given. No elderly father. No record at all. Whoever Tessa was, she hadn't been waiting for anyone. She had been there for Priya. Priya still won't accept drinks from strangers. Not water, not coffee, nothing in a cup she didn't watch being poured. She said it's not paranoia at this point. It's just how she lives now. I think she's probably right. Joel described himself to me as someone who'd spent 30 years working job sites and learned pretty early that you develop a sense for when something's off. Not psychic, not intuition in any mystical way, just pattern recognition from being around a lot of different people in a lot of unpredictable situations. He could usually tell when a crew member was about to do something unsafe or when a client was going to be difficult before anything actually happened. He'd learned to trust. That read, he was in the waiting room of a hospital in Portland, Maine on a Tuesday afternoon in September. His wife had been admitted the day before for a gallbladder procedure, routine. She was fine, but she'd had a reaction to one of the anesthesia medications, and they'd kept her an extra day for monitoring. Joel had been going back and forth between the hospital and home, taking care of their 2 dogs, not sleeping much. That afternoon he was waiting while they ran a follow-up scan. He'd been there since 10 a.m., and he was running on bad vending machine coffee and about 4 hours of sleep. He found a chair in the corner of the waiting room, back to the wall, out of habit, and closed his eyes. He didn't sleep. But he rested. When he opened his eyes, there was a teenage boy sitting across from him. 15, maybe 16. Slight build, dark hoodie, backpack at his feet. Not on his phone. Just sitting there, elbows on his knees, looking at the floor. Joel thought. A kid whose parent is in there somewhere. He'd seen plenty of them over the past 2 days. Kids in waiting rooms always looked slightly unmoored, like they were used to being the one who got taken care of and didn't know what to do when the roles switched. But something made Joel keep looking at him. The kid hadn't checked in. Joel had been watching the desk on and off. He was facing it from his corner, and the kid had come in, looked around, and sat down without going near the desk. Joel told himself. Maybe someone already checked in for him. Maybe he just went to the bathroom first. 20 minutes passed. The kid hadn't moved, hadn't taken out his phone, hadn't gone to the desk. Just sat with his eyes on the floor. Joel's wife texted. Scan was going to be another hour. He got up, got a bad coffee from the machine, came back. The kid looked up at him. Excuse me, the kid said. His voice was very even. very flat. Do you know how long they usually keep people? Joel said it depended. Why was he here? The kid said, I'm waiting for someone. Joel said, who? The kid looked at him, sighed, I'm not sure yet. Joel sat down slowly. Something about that answer sat completely wrong. Not sure yet. Like he didn't know who he was waiting for until he found them. Joel looked at the backpack. The kid watched him look at it. Neither of them said anything for a moment. Then the kid reached down and put his hand on the backpack strap. Joel stood up again, walked to the desk. Calm, normal pace, told the receptionist there was a kid in the waiting room who hadn't checked in. No adult with him. The receptionist looked past him, called a colleague over. They walked out from behind the desk. Joel followed them. The chair was empty. The backpack was gone. Joel walked to the exit, looked through the glass. The kid was outside, standing on the sidewalk, not walking away, just standing. He was looking back through the glass. At Joel. Security went out. By the time they got to the sidewalk, he was gone. They checked the camera. The kid had come in 11 minutes before Joel noticed him, had sat for the entire time without approaching anyone, had left the moment Joel stood up and walked to the desk, like he was watching for the right moment. And Joel had interrupted something. The backpack. Nobody could tell Joel what was in it. His wife was discharged the next morning. He got her home, got her comfortable, and then sat in his truck in the driveway for a long time. He filed a report with the hospital security team and with the local non-emergency police line. They noted it. Nothing came of it. What Joel comes back to, what he told me he thinks about when he can't sleep, is that answer. I'm not sure yet. Because it implies a process. It implies that he had criteria, and he was working through them, and he was close to deciding. Joel still trusts his instincts, maybe more than he used to, but he said something to me at the end of our conversation that I haven't been able to shake. I don't think I was the one he was looking at, he said. I think he saw me watching him and adjusted. He paused. I think he'd already picked someone else.